Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order this meeting of the Willows City Council for Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Item 2 on our agenda tonight, Pledge of Allegiance. Our immediate past mayor, Mr. Rick Thomas, would you do the honors in leading us in the pledge, please? Would be pleased. Luke, play.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rick. Item 3, roll call. Mr. Hoover, our city clerk.
Councilmember Thomas. Here. Councilmember Wadden.
Here.
Councilmember Sprague is out sick tonight, and Vice Mayor Hudson.
Here.
And Mayor Hanson.
Here. Thank you, Amos. Item 4, changes to the agenda. City Manager Marty Brown, good evening. Any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes.
Okay, thank you. Council?
No.
Okay,
None here.
thank you very much. Moving on to item 5, public comment and consent calendar forum. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are approved by one motion and vote unless council members or the city manager first request that a matter be removed for separate discussion and action. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning consent calendar items or regarding matters that are not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes at this time. Please address your comments to the mayor and council members and not to staff or the audience. By state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation that would you like distributed to the city council, please mail it to the city clerk at 201 North Lassen Street, Willows, California, or mail it to our city clerk, Mr. Amos Hoover. Item 5A, register approval. Consider approving the general checking, payroll, and direct deposit check registers. Item 5B, minutes approval. Consider approval of the December 12th and December 19th, 2023 council meeting minutes. Item 5C, the South Tehama Water Main Extension Project. Consider approval of the resolution accepting the improvements associated with the South Tehama Water Main Extension Project and authorize the filing of the notice of completion and release of surety. Item 5D, Willows Sewer Lift Station Design Project. Consider adopting the resolution and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with NextGen Utility Management, also known as NextGen, for design of the Willows Lift Station Rehabilitation Project. Any questions, comments in reference to the consent calendar this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question that on 5D
Yes, Mr.
that
Thomas.
I'd like to ask Mr. Wanger. The design work is $170,000 for 5 lift stations. That's $34,000 each.
Mhm.
Seems like a high number to me, but I'm from the private sector, not knowing what the public sector is all about. Can you give us a little bit more light as to the depth of that?
Absolutely. So this contract that we're talking about tonight takes care of actually 5 CIP projects. And in each one of the CIP projects that are actually before you tonight, we list out both of design and construction costs for each individual lift station. It just so happens that this contract is within a few $100s of totaling up all the design costs that we listed in the CIP for all 5 lift stations. But in general, just so the council knows, the design is going to include reinstallation, well, demolition and reinstallation of rails where pumps slide down on them. It's going to redo mechanical lids. It's going to redo the inside coating of all the manholes, but probably more importantly, with each lift station, there's something called SCADA, which is it's a communication system where if there's an alarm because a pump isn't working or the well is filling up too fast or what have you, there's alarms that go off. And right now we have kind of a mishmash of how staff gets alerted to that. Some of them are based on manual visual observations. Others, we actually get alarms. What this is going to do is for all 5 lift stations, put in the exact same kind of SCADA that's going to modernize it, as well as it's going to allow our staff to be able to be alerted on their cell phones and be able to pull up exactly what the problem is based on the software that they're going to be installing. So it's not only hard improvements that they're designing and specifying, but it's also all of the SCADA system electronics and communication equipment that's in there.
Thank you.
Oh, can I add to that? So that's just design. What most of the description sound like the work to be done. There's an additional cost for the work to be done, yes?
Absolutely. I'd have to add it up, but I want to say to rehabilitate all 5 pump stations, I want to say it was an average of 250 to 300,000 per lift station to completely rehabilitate it. And that's where we're moving. Once they finish design, we're going to move into construction, and this is actually to expend some of the bond refinance monies that we had that we are supposed to have spent, I believe, by December of 2024. So this has been in the works for a while, but we're doing all 5 at once.
And the material suggested that these lift stations have a window of survival of 5 years. Did I read that right?
No, it's typically, well, the pumps, it depends on how frequently the pumps are, but the average life expectancy of a pump station is probably more in the 15 to 20-year
1.5
range.
to 2.0.
Yeah.
And how long has it been since we did these?
Most of them quite a while. The newest one is the one down in Road
Right.
57 in Tehama, which requires the least amount of work, but some of the other ones for complete rehabilitation, it's been over 30 years.
Last question is, assuming this is a decision to be made to do this. If we didn't do it, what would happen?
That's a really good question. And to answer that, it's a little tough. It could range from anything from a lot of visual inspections to literally sewage running into the streets, which we would get fined by the State Water Quality Control Board, to just an ungodly amount of maintenance on staff's behalf. You know, we'd nickel and dime ourselves to death.
And how much of the money is coming from sources other than the general fund?
All of it. It's coming from the enterprise fund.
It-
Very good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions, gentlemen? in
None
reference
for me,
to
sir.
5D?
No.
No? Mr.
No.
Hudson? No?
They were asked and answered. That's the case. I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Mr. Thomas has moved to approve the consent calendar as presented. Mr. Bodden has the second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carries unanimously 4-0. Thank you. Item 6, public hearing. Item 6A. Now, we have a public hearing agendized in reference to the updated 5-year capital improvement program, also known as the CIP for fiscal year 2023-2027. Be conducting a public hearing, and upon conclusion, consider approval of the resolution adopting the 5-year capital improvement plan, CIP, for, again, the fiscal year 2023 to 2027. City Manager Marty Brown, would you like to begin, or would you like to throw this to our city engineer?
I'm just going to throw it straight to John, since this is really a continuation from a meeting in December when he initially presented it to all of you and said, we're going to come back for this public hearing and hopefully your approval tonight. So
Thank you, Marty, our very capable
Take it
city
away.
engineer, John Wanger. Mr. Wanger, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Mr. Mayor and council members. As Marty just mentioned, this was before you at the December 12th council meeting for review and comment. And since that time, no significant changes have been made to the CIP, but tonight, the final version is before you, and we are conducting a required public hearing on this document tonight. Just as a brief reminder, the city created a 5-year CIP and brought the very first one to you last fiscal year in 22-23. And this was the first time in 22-23 that you've ever had a 5-year comprehensive CIP. And the document does help both council and staff keep our focus on priorities and allows the city to be a little bit more proactive. With respect to the overall CIP, it starts out at a very high level, and as you move through the document, it provides a lot more detail on specific projects. And as mentioned on the December 12th meeting, just in summary, what was completed in fiscal year 22-23 included 4 major street construction projects were completed, as well as a design of an annual street rehabilitation project that will be going out to bid this month. 2 sewer projects move forward, that being the lift station rehabilitation RFP that put out and was just awarded, as well as filing a state revolving loan fund grant that we discussed at the last meeting that we're hoping for upwards of $14 to $15 million in grant monies from that. We also put out the pool project for design, and that was awarded but put on hold due to financing. But I am happy to report that Caltrans has gotten back to staff, and it appears that they are going to be fine with adding in the pool rehabilitation into that grant. So what we're going to be able to do is we're actually going to take that grant money as well as the contributions from the county for $200,000 and some Prop 68 monies and move forward. And that's not only going to do some of the things that we were looking for before, but it's going to put in a shade structure. It's going to redo all the decking and a lot of other stuff. So that's a very, very positive project moving forward. As well as there was some fire equipment that was purchased last year that was shown in the CIP. In the CIP for this year, there's some new and or carryover projects from last year, and they include the street rehabilitation project that I just mentioned that will be going out to bid this month. We're actually doing our first annual sidewalk replacement program. We're hoping to replace at least $50,000 worth of sidewalks. So that's a new project that we've never done before. We already talked about the sewer lift station rehabilitation project. We hope to rehabilitate all 5 of the city's sewer lift stations. We're proposing on having a sewer main replacement and rehabilitation project. We're looking at improvements for a couple of areas at the wastewater treatment plant. We're going to be replacing HVAC units at City Hall, as well as replacing the doors at City Hall to make them more ADA compliant. And we're going to be talking or moving forward with the Sycamore Park project that I just discussed, as well as we just completed the water main extension project that was approved and accepted on the consent calendar. And then also there's some purchase for some additional fire equipment. So in total for this year, we're talking about $3.4 million in capital projects proposed to be completed this year. And as mentioned at the introduction of this is a public hearing. It's recommended that the council open the public hearing, take any comments, and then close the public hearing and provide staff with any desired direction. And if the CIP is acceptable, you can adopt the resolution attached. Now, one project that I know we received public comment on that I just wanted to mention very briefly. We received some comments on the Green Street project because we did say that was completed this last year, actually carried over to this year as well. That project that was in the CIP included rehabilitation of Green Street from North Lassen to about 300 feet to the east, which was it was probably the poorest paving in the entire city. But we were able to rehabilitate that. We replaced some curb and gutter as well as sidewalk, but that portion of the project was completed. There was originally another project proposed, and it was going to be a joint project between the county and the city, because the remainder of Green Street to the east of where we stopped actually becomes joint ownership, where the city owns 60% of the road and the county owns 40% of the road. And the thought that staff had was we can go in with a joint project with the county. The idea was to actually have the county crews do the work, and then we would enter into a cost sharing mechanism, which was going to save us a significant amount of money. The agreement between the county and the city is the city was going to provide some preliminary design, provide it to the county, and then they were going to follow that during construction. We completed our end, gave it to the county, and the county did a quick takeoff. And what they found is that the amount of money that they were going to have to spend in materials and their time exceeded, I believe it was $200,000, which precluded them from doing that at a staff level without having to go out to bid. So when they told us that they were going to have to go out to bid, that the county crews couldn't do it, that kind of stopped that project at that point in the game. It still is a joint project that needs to get done, but I will say our pavement management program does indicate that there are several other streets that are higher priority within the city that we're focusing on. Not to say that we would never do that project, but it's just not as high of a priority at this point in time. So I did want to mention that one particular project just because we got public comments on it during the past week.
Yeah, thank you thank you for that explanation, Mr. Wanger, because I also received an email from a constituent with the very same question.
Yeah.
I believe probably the same constituent.
It was.
So that answers that very
As-
precisely.
As
So
did I.
Yeah.
Probably the same guy.
very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything further, John?
No, at that point, I'm happy to answer any questions or you can open the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much for that report out. Gentlemen, in the council, you have any questions or comments before we open the public hearing?
I just had one. You said that the county can't do the paving project, and why is that?
Um,
I missed that
So,
part.
so my understanding, and again, we'd have to confirm this with the county, but in talking with Talia, who is oversees all their public works folks, she told me that once a project exceeded $200,000 in expenditures, that dollar amount was set at a limit by the Board of Supervisors, that anything above that, they wanted to put out for public bidding. And so what they were estimating based on the size of the project, that between the manpower that they were going to have to put out as well as the material, that it was going to exceed that. So they were following their own rules and regulations.
Right,
at that
which makes
point.
sense because
Yeah.
if it's bigger than that, then they're taking their people away from
Right.
several other projects. Okay.
I think that's actually a public contract code of over $200,000. You enter a formal bidding procedures and it's mandatory. So
Okay.
outside of their internal policy,
Right.
it's a mandate that over a certain amount of money, you cannot do it with in-house staff from public contract code.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
Mr. Vaughn, yes.
Mr. Wager, sort of from the layman's point of view, $3.4 million incorporated into a capital improvement budget for a period of time, which is described as somewhat fluid, subject to change. Next year it can be a little different. I have this question. If a citizen asked me, if we're running out of money and we're crying foul about bankruptcy, where are we going to get the $3.4 million to do these projects?
So in the CIP document itself, there is, I believe, something called a fund summary. And in that funding summary, it shows what the various different funds are that are funding each of the project. I will tell you that if I could find it real quick. So out of all that money, there's a small amount of development impact fee library fees that are being used. There's gas tax funds, CDBG funds, RSTP, which is roadway funds, SB1, which is roadway funds, sewer capital funds, California State Library grant funds, state revolving fund monies, the Caltrans Clean California grant funds, Prop 68, county contributions. And out of that total amount that we've listed of 3.4 million, 57,500 of it is scheduled to come out of the general fund. And about 162 of that is considered unfunded at this point, and that's primarily associated with the fire equipment. But very little of this money is actually coming out of the general fund. It's coming out of other.
Thank you for so stating for the public record. I appreciate that.
You
It
bet.
also attaches this to the impact fees, this particular budgeting process or the capital program. Could you explain the reason for the connection and how that works?
Sure. So in the city had a nexus study done in 2008, I believe, that originally set up the development impact fees. And there are sections in the government code, the California government code, it's section 66,000 through 66,008 that kind of tell you how you're supposed to establish those, as well as if the city has a capital improvement program, you have to list all those projects in the capital improvement program, as well as when you anticipate on that money being spent and the amount of money for each one of the projects. So having those projects in the CIP fulfills the requirements that are specified in the government code. I will say that, there is a significant amount of money that's listed in the 5th year and beyond in the development impact fees. And later on in tonight's agenda, we're going to be talking about that annual report. But part of it is because we know what improvements will be triggered by which projects. We just don't know when those when those are going to occur because they're development driven.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any further questions from the council before we
None
open
for
the
me,
public
Mr.
hearing?
Mayor.
Nothing?
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, I just one brief comment too, and just want to reiterate that the capital improvement program is a living document and is a project roadmap, and is always subject to modifications as we move forward. With that,
Mary Hanson, if I could just
oh,
comment.
yeah, Ms. Brown, yes, please.
I just wanted to point out too that we have a requirement for SB1 funds for roads that is called a maintenance of effort, which we match with general fund money. So in order to get those state funds, we have to match a certain percentage of general fund money to get additional state fund money for roads, which is the little bit that's talked about in the capital improvement program. So that's why we're doing that, so that we can get even more for roads. And also I wanted to point out that all those other list of funds that John just listed, those cannot be used for other kinds of general fund activities. I want to make that clear because people might think, well, why don't we take those monies and use them for funding fire or something? And they're all very specific restricted funds that cannot be used for the bulk of general fund activity.
Yeah, thank you, Marty.
Thank you. The more we explain these things, the better it is.
Any further questions for Marty before we move forward? Excuse my stumbling there. I was waiting. Our fire chief was receiving an emergency page. So I was letting him conduct his business briefly. He had to leave the meeting. So, okay. Moving forward with the public hearing in reference to the capital improvement program, the time is 6:23 PM. We'll open the public hearing in reference to the matter at this time. And since we've now come to the public input portion of the hearing, the public hearing is being recorded and is subject to possible review by the courts. Therefore, all statements or remarks must be made clearly and distinctly into the microphone. If there is anyone in the audience who has any pertinent evidence or opinions or statements relevant to issues being heard, please step to the microphone. And although it is not required, it is also requested that you please state and spell your name for the record. And comments are generally restricted to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments in reference to the capital improvement program this evening? If so, please approach the podium. Nothing? Last call? Quiet crowd. Okay. Well, the time is still 6:23 and we'll close the public hearing in reference to this matter at this time. Gentlemen, council members, this is an action item. There is an attached resolution. Unless you have any further questions or comments. Pleasure of the council.
Move the resolution of the City Council of the City of Willow, State of California, approving the 5-year capital improvement program fiscal years 2023 through 2027. Do I have to read all the whereases?
Oh, no, Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Vaughn's moved to approve item 6A as presented and adopt the resolution as presented. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Mr. Thomas has the second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Hoover, this will be a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
and Mayor Hanson.
Aye. Thank you, Amos. Matter carries 4-0. Item 7, discussion and action calendar. All matters in this section of the agenda are discussed and will be acted on individually. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning any of these items are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes at this time. Please address your comments to the mayor and council members and not to staff and or the audience. When the mayor calls for public comment, please raise your hand or be acknowledged. When not required, the city requests that you please state your name clearly for the audio recording, and by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Item 7A, fiscal year 2022-2023 annual development impact fee. This matter has been agendized in order to consider the Mitigation Fee Act, AB 1600, report on development impact fees for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, and consider adoption of the attached resolution.
And
Uh,
Mayor, before we start the discussion and action
Yeah,
agenda,
City Attorney Walker, yes.
sorry, thank you. If we could just open it up for public comment for anything that's not on the agenda, in case there is public comment.
That was at the top.
It's at the top.
He did that.
Oh, he did.
Public comment and consent calendar.
I don't know if, did you open it up before the consent calendar?
I read
Together.
I read it, but I can call again.
Okay, I just
did.
wanted to make sure that.
I
we were
did read
clear.
it. Yeah, I read it
Okay.
verbatim, but I'll be happy to do it again.
It's
Yeah.
up to your, it's up to
That's
you.
fine. I can, members of the audience, is there any public comment on any items not on the agenda this evening? If so, please approach the microphone. No? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Very good. Move back to item 7A, the 2022-2023 Annual Development Impact Fee Reports. Ms. Brown, do you have anything before we turn it over to City Engineer, Mr.
I'm
Wagner?
going to hand it right over into the capable hands.
Very
of the
good.
City engineer.
John, you're on again. The star of the show tonight.
That wasn't the intent, but Mr. Mayor and council members, I will gladly cover this item. As I kind of mentioned in the prior CIP item, there's Government Code Section 66,000 through 66,008. That is kind of stipulates all the rules and regulations associated with Development Impact Fee Program. And since we adopted that in 2008, the city is required to annually provide a report to the public showing the revenues received in the past fiscal year, any expenditures that took place in the past fiscal year, and the balance of each of the funds. So the annual report was prepared and made available in mid-December to the public via the city's website. And the report covers all the development impact fee categories. As it was posted on the city's website, it was within the 180 days specified in the government code that the public had a chance to review that. Just as a brief summary, the fee categories where development impact fees are collected include library, parks and recreation, freeway interchanges, street and traffic, public safety, fire, wastewater, and storm drainage. The total revenues collected from all development impact fees in fiscal year 22-23 totaled up $4,078. And as can be seen in the report, the only expenditures that occurred in fiscal year 2022-23 in any of the development impact fee categories was $65,163 in fire development impact fees to pay debt service associated with the lease of an HME fire apparatus piece of equipment. Certainly, the council can provide staff with any comments or questions. If the report is acceptable, there's a resolution attached to the staff report that staff is recommending that the city council approve. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Council members, questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Vaughn?
I'm not a fan of impact fees as a revenue source. I noticed that in several of the categories, no money had been spent whatsoever. My first question, and I don't know if anybody can answer it, is are these impact fees detrimental to the development and growth of business in the community of Willows? I don't know how you answer that. It's an opinion, but I believe that we have heard more than once from individuals developing in our city that the fees were too high and too great and too much, and so they went somewhere else. So I'm basically editorializing here. Only a handful of these, like you said, 65 for the fire thing. And yet we got lots of grants for fire stuff as well. So I don't know how to address the idea of impact fees as a revenue source when it could in fact be a barrier to development for the community. Anybody want to comment on that?
What I can say is the whole intent of development impact fees is to ensure that development pays their own way. So otherwise, let's say on Basin Street project, if they were to develop, there's a number of impacts that development is going to have on a number of different city facilities. And the intent of this, so development impact fee monies are restricted monies. When we collect them in each of the categories, they cannot be spent on anything else. They can't be spent on maintenance. They have to be projects associated with development. So in the 2008 development impact fee nexus study that we had done, for each one of the fees, they list out different projects that are slated with each one of those fees. As money is collected and as impacts come forth, the city should be taking those development impact fee monies and fulfilling those projects which are mentioned in the development impact fee program. To date, and this is also mentioned in the report, our growth has pretty much been flat since
Actually negative.
2008. What's that?
It's actually negative. According to the report. it's
Yeah,
actually
it-
negative.
just
And
slightly
that's
negative.
Over a span of years, so it's not just what
Right.
report. So.
Right.
And the fees are tied to growth in population. So that's another reason why I question, and forgive me for interrupting you, John, but the freeway interchange, streets, I understand. Traffic, things like that, I understand. Library? What are we doing? Is this money we're generating or is this?
Well, so with the interchange, that was intended as an impact fee for the impact of Walmart. So the thinking, generally is that you build a market the size of Walmart and you're going to increase traffic on and off the ramps.
So
And
they
so
did,
it's
thank
to
goodness.
expand the size of the interchange to accommodate the traffic. So that's an example of, which is a real example here in the city of a reason for an impact fee, that the idea that the citizens of Willows shouldn't bear the burden of, increasing the size of an interchange on-ramp and off-ramp for a private enterprise, that burden should be borne by the private enterprise that's increasing the traffic flow. That's the law. If
I
you're
thought
looking for law-
Caltrans did interchanges.
I'm sorry?
I thought Caltrans did interchanges, and I can understand Walmart paying, but not Joe Blow that's opening up a store somewhere in town.
I don't know the exact improvements that were needed with Walmart and what the agreement was.
Actually, they were required, I think they put in 3 traffic signals and did some modifications to either side of of that interchange.
But
So-
Caltrans they're not going to pay for private enterprise their impacts either. I mean, somebody has to bear the cost. They wouldn't do it either.
Where, how would that show up on a citizen of Willow's bill? Where would it show up if that cost that if they were to bear it?
It'd come out of the general fund. I mean, or some of these other funds that we talked about, I suppose.
And then the citizens would be then obligated through normal taxing mechanisms to refund it or to rebuild the
It
general
would
fund.
just come out of out of the
Okay.
general fund that's
Okay.
completed. So,
Well, and
you.
honestly, depending upon the size of the improvement, like an interchange project could cost millions of dollars that it would just never get done, potentially.
probably, yeah, that's true.
Well, I noticed that
Mr.
this one
Mayor, if
actually
I may,
refers.
just- Oh, go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
If I may answer one of your questions, from my experience when I was in the title insurance industry where there was a lot of development, professional developers were aware of the impact fees and the necessity to create fees for proper drainage to their project and those other ancillary benefits that would come to them, and it was all built into their overall budget. So it might have a bigger impact on one individual business that wanted to build a new building. But those are pretty much standard expected costs, no matter if you're in Willows, Orland, Chico, or Sacramento.
At the levels we have.
I've not compared them, but they. seem-
Actually higher levels
They're low.
typically.
think
These,
they're-
these are actually pretty low levels.
I know that before, in Chico, you would stick a shovel in the ground for a house. It was over $50,000.
Seems wrong to me.
It seems wrong, but that's what it was, and that's what they pay.
And they're building
And that
tons of
slowed down
houses.
the building in Chico.
Anything further, Mr. Bud?
No, thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. On the police impact fee, can we use that for a consultant for the reconstruction or reconstitution of a police department?
We would have to take a closer look at that. If we could justify associating that with some level of growth, I think we could. But if it is just looking at reconstituting a police department, we'd have to look into that, honestly.
Well, the report here shows the police impact fees can be used to pay for the GCSO for these costs.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if we could use some of that $61,742 for a consultant to explore the reconstitution of a police department.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
If I may, I think that we'll be at next week at the special meeting on the 17th. I did speak with Andy today and we did talk about recommending to the council the possibility of using the police impact fees as a way to possibly offset the cost from the general fund of the sheriff's contract. So I was going to wait to see what the council thought of that idea before moving forward with a conversation, because of course, there are specifics in the police impact fees that, criteria of what that money could be used for. The sheriff would have to agree that 70,000 that Isn't that what's in there, about 70,000?
61,000.
61,000. That's the number Andy gave me today, but 61,000, that be used towards the 2 million, but there'd have to be an agreement that that 61,000 be used for things that qualify under the Nexus study.
I see.
So we were gonna recommend that to the council next week and see if, you're interested as part of the budget adjustment. And if you are, then I would talk to the sheriff's department about how we could possibly make that work.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more. What's the remaining balance of the fire truck lease? Do we know what that is? Is that?
Yes, it's
Because we paid
actually,
65,000 and do we have more owing on that lease?
the ending balance is about $1,700.
So that's all that's remaining on that fire truck lease?
And the impact fees, right?
In the fire impact fee account, the beginning balance was 66,144 at the beginning of 22-23, and at the end of the year, it was $1,713.
So probably don't have that answered tonight, but at the next meeting, if we knew how much was still owed on that fire lease.
I'll confirm it, but I'm pretty sure it's just one more year and it'll have to come out of the general fund. Andy and I have discussed this before.
Okay. Thank you.
And it should show up in the next week's financial forecast model when we present that to the council. You should be able to see how that is part of the overall impact to the budget.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
No, yeah, thank you, Mr. Thomas. I know it is getting close to pay off, so. Anything further, Mr. Button?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Hudson?
I just have a couple of general question is, I see a lot of these impact fees and I don't see money coming out of them to go towards anything. So we have this money sitting aside inside of our general fund,
Mhm.
but we're not doing any of the improvement projects that they're designed to help with. I mean, I'm looking at the Parks and Recs and I see a long list of really good ideas to help with Parks and Rec. I look at the library fund and I see, almost $150,000 sitting there. So I'm curious, when does that money get spent? Is that ear tagged or bookmarked for a specific item? Is there a reason why we're not pulling out of, to replace the HVAC system with those impact fee funds?
We actually are.
We are.
We
This-
are?
Yeah.
Okay.
the-
I just didn't, like I said, I didn't see any expenditures out of it this year.
Well,
Right.
this was for fiscal year 22-23. This
23,
is
okay.
kind of retroactively reporting what happened last year.
Gotcha. Okay. And since that happened in the second half of 23, it'd be on
Right.
next year's. Okay.
I think
So that was just my general question was I just see a lot of numbers sitting there pretty stagnant that I don't see any expenditures coming out of. So I just didn't know if there was anything in the works to use those monies or.
There are, I mean, in the development impact fee nexus report that was done in 2008, for instance, under the Parks and Recreation fee that's mentioned in the report, there were new solar lights for solar lights for park around play equipment, pathways and pedestrian and walkway lighting, 2 new softball fields, bike paths and BMX courses, warm-up area for softball pitchers, coin or token operated softball lights, pathways in the parks, trees, 2 soccer fields and 14 acres of additional parks.
Right. I see all that, but where's,
So,
is that projects that we're looking to get done?
so
or-
for,
Because they weren't, in
for-
2008, the softball fields were already there. There's not 2 new ones.
so for instance, with the approval of the Basin Street property, probably a little bit over 10 years ago, there was going to be a dedication of parks in there that were going to include soccer fields, baseball fields, a variety of things that we were going to be able to use these impact fees to pay for improving those facilities. And that would be a direct, as growth occurs, there's going to be more people wanting to use those facilities. So as they dedicate land and as we improve those, we would be using these monies to expand those. There are other things in here that quite honestly we've looked at. And the important thing with most of these that you have to be very cognizant of is they can't be used for upgrading or maintaining existing facilities. They have to be for expansion
Okay.
based on future growth.
So is that something where the Little League baseball fields, we could let's say upgrade those to have lights so that it expands their
Yeah,
like use or
well,
things
yeah,
like
they're-
that, or
they're-
no, is that?
there's monies within these funds that will, we just have to stick to the appropriate projects that are identified in
Already
here.
identified. Okay.
But as long as, as long as we cannot expend it on maintenance, that, we can certainly look into that.
And if
Uh,
I could just add, I
I'm
think
just-
that
yeah.
there's a variety of other challenges that have happened. One was already pointed out that, that the city's population itself has actually gone down and impact fees are to address growth and development. And so
Right.
there hasn't been a lot of that. When we use the impact fees for the HVAC for the library, we were able to, make a nexus that the county's population has grown and the library is a county source that people use as a hot cold center. So it's not just for the citizens of Willows. So if we can make those same kinds of connections with some of the things, the other, activities and projects that were listed, we could possibly look at that. I think the other thing that has just been challenging though is we just haven't had, the people to
The
do
time and
some
the
of the
people.
projects. It hasn't been a priority compared to some of the other fires, no pun intended, we've been
Right.
putting out for the last 3 or 4 years. So I think that's been the other challenge is it takes some brain power to sit down and think about how can we use this in a way that is consistent and complies with the state law and the Nexus study, and we're not violating anything, right? And at the same time, make sure that we actually have the ability and the funds to do it, because some of these things might require either additional grant money when we actually go out to do design and construction for some of the projects in the Nexus study. They may not be completely fulfilled by the impact fees. We may need additional funds, and then where do we get those, right?
Right.
So there just hasn't actually also been physically the ability to address that.
Okay. No, like I'm asking questions,
No,
learning,
good. Those are good
so
questions.
sorry, John, I know you've been doing a lot of talking. that
No, that's
we weren't
fine.
Really planning on, but,
But this is our job, is to make sure that we get
Yeah.
you guys the information.
so, but I mean, when we're talking these impact fees, we can say, hey, developers, when you guys come and want to start putting in new houses, the city's willing to start,
Yeah.
looking at putting in parks and,
Yep.
hopefully increasing your house values to draw people to our town.
Right.
Is essentially how we can use those impact fees. Then.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
And I think the parks I think they are something that are a draw that is not just the city, that is also county residents that use some of these bigger parks, especially Jensen and Sycamore. And there are some smaller, maybe not huge projects, but smaller projects that are in there that if they're not addressed by the $4 million grant, that we possibly could use the park and recreation impact.
Anything further, Mr. Hudson?
No, sir, that was it. That answered a lot of questions that I kind of had going on that one. So thank you very much.
Okay, is there any public comment on this in reference to the annual development impact fee report this evening? Mr. Ross, good evening. Good to see you, Doug.
Mutually. Doug Ross, DOUGROSS, resident of Willows. It was about 2008 or something when the Walmart, upgrading to it from a department store, small department store to a larger, grocery and so forth took place. At that time, the city of Willows contracted with Pacific Municipal Consultants, EMC, to, structure the, and I'm lost as to what the name of the document would be, but PMC wrote up all the requirements that Walmart would be required to do in order to gain their permit or whatever to get their expansion. It was the word I was looking for, expansion. One of those components was the a complete redoing of the signalization and the general intersection of North Humboldt Avenue and West Wood Street. It was in the literature that that was a requirement. The conditions, when the gavel banged at the city council level, it said that was a condition of approval. However, that never got done. In a general kind of philosophical way about the state putting a lot of pressure on the county and cities to dot the i's and cross the t's. And I know Caltrans wasn't directly involved in that signalization, and they did do a little bit. They improved the part from I-5 to Airport Road. But my question, it might be more rhetorical than ever salvageable, but it always has bugged me since then that that intersection was never remediated or upgraded according to the conditions of approval. I know it's bad when one's memory outstrips the necessity to go to the archives to talk about information. But that has a good side of it also. So I may be the only person in town who's concerned about such a thing, but it strikes me as somewhat irregular that something would manifestly be in the conditions of approval and then it never got done and no subsequent action was taken. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Mr. Ross. I know there were a number of signalization improvements made during that time frame during the Walmart expansion, but I mean, it's been quite a few years now. My memory escapes me, but thank you, Mr. Ross. Any further public comment in reference to this matter? None, gentlemen, council, anything further? This is an action item and a resolution. Pleasure of the council.
Have another resolution. Hold on a second.
If you're not, I'll do it if you're still looking, so.
I set my front page somewhere too.
There you go. There you go, son.
There you go.
I move to approve the resolution of the City Council of the City of Willow, State of California, approving the fiscal year 2022-2023 Annual Development Impact Fee Report.
Second.
Mr. Thomas has moved to approve item 7A as presented, and Vice Mayor Hudson has the second. Further discussion? Mr. Hoover, this would be a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hanson.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Matter. It's approved 4-0 majority vote, unanimous vote, I'm sorry. Moving on to item 7B. New Proposition 218 sewage rate study. This matter has been agendized in order to discuss the possibility of starting a new Proposition 218 sewage rate study in 2024 and provide direction to study. City Manager Brown.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. John is only partially off the hook for this one. I didn't write the staff report, but pretty much since the new council was sworn in, this has been an ongoing discussion about whether or not to do a new rate study. And it came back again for discussion in the fall. We tabled it in the interest of being down 3 positions at the time. And now that we're mostly ramped up, we have two of the 3 positions filled now. I thought I'd bring it back to the council for consideration. As you are probably aware, the current rate study expires basically in June of 2026. And so typically we would start another rate study basically 2 years from right now in January of 26 under normal circumstances. You typically do a rate study every 5 years. And so we would be doing another one in 2 years to consider any rate increases or decreases for the fiscal year 26-27. The current rate study covers through fiscal year 25-26. And there's a rate increase this year as well as the next 2 fiscal years are included in the current rate study. And I know there's a strong interest to reevaluate both commercial rates as well as multifamily. That's why this is being presented to the council this evening for consideration. Can certainly start earlier. I'm not sure that the outcome will be any different, but that's certainly a discretionary for the council to decide whether to move forward with the rate study 2 years earlier than proposed. And I asked John to stay on in case you have some technical questions for him about whether or not we may or may not see different outcomes and what's the methodology that could be used. Is there different methodology that could be used for coming up with a commercial rate in terms of the flat rate combined with the volumetric rate, which is how it is now, as well as multifamily. There is, for better or for worse, there is quite a bit of case law out there about what you can and can't do. So we'll certainly want to be aware of that as we move forward and we consider if the council wants to consider a new rate study earlier, look at a different methodology for coming up with new sewer rates. So with that, that concludes my presentation. You might have some technical questions about the methodology. And is there a different methodology we could be using? It's my understanding there's not really another one, but John can certainly speak to that better than I can.
Thank you, Marty.
The one
Tom?
question.
Sorry.
Well, during my stint as the mayor, I asked for NBS to come back and discuss with us their methodology, and I still never felt like I got a decent answer. Basically, what I heard was the gentleman was saying, well, this was all very defensible, and the decisions to put it forth was based on defensibility, not necessarily. It certainly seems to me unfair that we had such a substantial increase of 17% to the residential people that live here. And then the apartments saw a 12% decrease. I have that written down. And to me, I think it would be prudent for us, for the benefit of our citizenry, to actually reconsider having a new study done to determine the fairness of what we're charging our residents, citizenry. And I know commercially, personally, and several of the folks on Sycamore Street that have properties, my building on Sycamore Street uses less than 1,500 gallons. And I'm paying $81 a month for the sewer, which is substantially higher than actually what needs to be. It's commercial building. It's part of what I factored in my budget, but for those that are operating a business, it seems to be difficult for them to cover. So I think it would be prudent for us to pursue a different rate study and to see if we can balance that playing field where there's a fairness across the board. And I don't know, from what Martin said, perhaps there's not going to be a different outcome. I'm unfamiliar with what would happen with the apartment houses, the multifamily. But it seems like they're not, they're getting a break. They actually save thousands of dollars when everybody else has went up. So I think it would be, I think our citizens request it, would like to see it. And so I would think we should do that.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, thank you. Any further comments?
Not at this time, no.
Mr. Bodden?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm absolutely 100% opposed to doing a study. We did a study and it put this crap out. And now we got this problem because the rates don't make sense to anybody, especially the people that are paying them. And I would hire somebody else to put out another crap study. I don't think so. I think we have other means of determining the price, and that the mission should be to change the pricing by whatever mechanism we can without a study. We don't need it. What are they going to tell us we don't know? I mean, realistically, how much would this study cost?
40 to 50,000.
40 to 50 grand. And look what we got.
And we did double check that with a recent jurisdiction that.
Understood. So I'm opposed to a rate study. I think we should find a way to modify the rates based on Mr. Thomas's and everybody else in the community's perception that they're inequitable, that they're unfair, and that they don't recognize the righteous value that the people that are being billed. So I don't think I want to pay 50 grand for a study. And do we have to do one every 5 years?
Yeah, you
Oh,
do.
good. So in
Proposition
2026,
218.
at gunpoint, we can do another one.
Correct.
Good.
Or not at gunpoint. I mean, either
Okay.
way. we
Thank
should
you.
Probably doing it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically,
2026.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, we paid a lot of money for this. I haven't found anybody that thinks it was right. And what's to assume, why would we assume that the next one would be better? Do we tell them what to tell us? Is that how that works? I mean, I don't know. But I don't want to study. I don't want to pay any money for a study.
Yeah, anything further? Mr. Bodden?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, first off, I have a question. If we did a rate study right now, when would it, let's say at lightning speed, when would it first take effect?
We might be able, well, we'd have to go out to bid because, right? So we'd have to go out to bid and I don't know that we might be able to make it in time for the new fiscal year. It'd probably be, but doubtful, as John just said. Yeah, it'd be pretty hard. we should have already gone out to bid and they should be
That would
in the
have been-
ground running right now.
Right, so for it to even be in effect by June, that would be all the ducks are lining up in a row, you know,
Probably not going to happen.
yeah, and pretty much possibility unlikely though, correct? Okay, so you're looking at it being
The
a
following
new
fiscal
rate
year.
of a $40,000 cost to us for a 1-year rate change before we have to do another one? Or would this one last for 5 years?
No, this one would last for 5 years. You'd be replacing the current one.
So during one of our most economically downfall times, we want to spend $40,000 to do a rate study to fix us for 1 year possibly. I mean, that's the
well,
way I'm
the-
looking at it, right? We're just moving the schedule up. and
Keep
essentially
in-
That's
1 year.
correct. You're
Keep in
moving the
mind,
schedule
this
up.
was 40, the new one won't be 40, trust me.
Probably won't be. You're probably right in 2 years.
So, but
You're
that's,
right.
that's my point though, to essentially move our schedule up, we're paying $40,000 when we are already looking for 2 pennies to rub together. And so I don't see it being worth the cost of the city. I live in town, I have a business in town. I pay the fees, so I'm not asking anybody to do anything that I'm not willing to do. I feel like some of the pressures that I feel coming from this are interests that live outside the town that have rental properties here who don't like it. So with that being said, I do not want to do another rate study and spend our city's money for a maybe.
I think
Maybe it'll change things.
the other thing you want to consider is that our bond refinancing, our certificate of participation to get the money to fix the lift stations was all dependent upon the results of this rate study. So I'd have to go back and talk to our financial advisors about if something comes back differently from the rate study, a new rate study, how would that possibly impact our disclosures to our bond holders for the bond of 3.3 million plus the the refinancing of the previous bond?
Because the idea is we have a set amount that we need to raise.
Mhm.
And then the rate study is just saying, this is how we charge the different groups to make sure we hit this goal.
Basically,
So
that-
either way,
yeah.
we come out,
it's
at
both
the end of the year, we can
operations,
write 'em out.
maintenance, and paying the bond. Yes.
okay,
Any further?
that's it. That's all I got.
You know, I agree with the comments from Mr. Bodden and Mr. Hudson. You know, there'd be no problem, you know, bumping up the Proposition 218 process 2 years if that was the will of the council. But, and David, like your question, do we have to have a rate study? Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, Proposition 218 requires that we have to have a rate study. And rate study, it's going to be, I'll say $50,000, probably closer to $50,000 for a rate study. Then the next question, my concern is with, one of my concerns with pursuing another rate study, if you don't like the answer, that's $40,000 or $50,000 that's gone. And you can maintain, you know, the next 2 years of our current 218 process. And then in 2026, obviously, we're be looking at a new 218 process in order to fund the sewer enterprise fund by law. So if you move forward with the rate study, you don't like the answer, especially with inflation, where it's been, you know, the last couple of years, we may not like the answer. The cost, the recommendation may be to move that number forward even higher. I know we all pay the fees. None of us like paying the fees. I don't like paying the fees either. I was on the council, as you all know, in 2021 when this matter was adopted, based on the rate study. The city manager just advised us the funding mechanisms, including the bond issue, all based on the current rate study. The company that was hired to conduct the rate study they're in the business of conducting these rate studies. I know the city of Chico recently went through the Proposition 218 process on their sewage enterprise fund with the same firm, and that is, you know, that matter moved forward with the significant rate increases. Unfortunately, here in the city of Willows and our clay soils, in order to the collection, obviously the rates, the sewage rates are for the collection and treatment of our sewage, which obviously we have to do, right? But because we're on the clay soils, our treatment process is much more costly than other areas, who are on gravel strata, for example. And those are the state requirements. But I'm not in favor of moving forward with another rate study because seriously, I don't know if we'll like the answers. In 2 years, we'll be moving forward, the city will be moving forward with another Proposition 218 process. I think it may be throwing, some, $40,000 to $50,000 down the drain, and for really, with no benefit beyond that. My recommendation would be to move forward with the rate study at, as we need to, moving forward with the current Proposition 218 process. Although, like I say, I don't, we all pay a significant amount of rates, fees and taxes, here in the state of California anyway. And I mean, none of us like it, but, we live here, so we pay for it. Like I say, the cost of the collection, maintenance and treatment of our sewage is extremely expensive. And it's not just here, it's the communities around us. Their sewage rates are very similar and higher for treatment in various communities who are on similar soil structures as we are here, in our fine community of Willows. But that's where I sit on it. So being intimately familiar with the 218 process, my question, John and Marty, would be, so if we decided to move forward with the new rate study and we didn't like the information that we received from the rate study, in other words, the cost could be higher. We don't have to pursue the 218 process, correct? We can just wait the 2 years. So if we conduct a rate study, we don't have to move forward with the 218 process, correct? Or is that incorrect?
I think he means the fees that they recommend.
Yeah,
We don't
we're
have
just
to adopt their
discussing that.
fees.
The fee study.
I think that you do have to actually,
Okay.
because the issue is that the jurisdiction or, the city cannot give away services that it's costing them more to provide. So if the rate study comes back that it costs this amount of money to provide that service, that's what we have to charge.
Okay, even though we're basically in the middle of our current 218 process, if we,
Because those studies are good for 5 years,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you can choose what rate you want
okay,
if you're
very good.
having more than one study done.
Well, that's a technical question that has never come up that, I just
And
wanted to ask tonight.
I can do the research and get more information, but my inclination is to say that I believe you have to accept the rates if you do complete a study.
So if we move forward with the process, we'd be embarking on a brand new Proposition 218 process for up to a 5-year funding mechanism period. There's no turning back if we move forward with this.
That's my
I
understanding.
think that's correct, yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I'd check that. Because I mean, it just doesn't
Well-
make sense to me that we could be obligated by a study that they came and explained to us as a council, we couldn't even figure out.
It's Prop 218.
Oh,
It's
wonderful.
technically to give the citizens the ability to have
Speak
more of
to
a
it.
say
Yeah.
on their fees, assessments and taxes.
So we can't change the rates until we do another study, period.
Correct.
I thought Councilman Sprague had some ideas for rates and changes.
It was a volunteer group that was gonna do that study.
I believe he had a volunteer group that he wanted to do the study.
Okay, thank you.
One other,
So along those lines, I'm sorry, Marty Brand,
go ahead.
just one thought. Along those lines, could you just briefly for the public's and just for everyone's recollection, just briefly outline the process of the 218 process?
Kind of what Marty said, basically to go out for RFP for the agency to conduct it. There has to be public notice given to all property owners that would be assessed that fee in the jurisdiction. And then not more or not less than 45 days from that public notice is mailed. You have to hold a public hearing and accept or, see if there is a majority of protest, it's called, at that public hearing for the fee increase. And the code describes what that means, what a majority protest means. So I can send that to the council or provide it to staff if you want the specifics in the law. But basically, it's a majority of the parcel owners that would be assessed that fee have a vote, one vote for each parcel or for their parcel, and make that determination. So a majority of those parcel owners need to protest for that fee to not go into effect. And so that process closes, there's a final notice after that public hearing, and then the fee is assessed from there or not assessed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Walker. Marty,
So
you
the,
you had a comment? Right.
well, I just,
Evan, go ahead.
so the voting for what happens for the majority of the city is based off the landowners, not the actual people living
Correct.
in the city limits. Okay.
It does get more confusing, as most law does. And
Correct.
we can do it. I can send the council, there's several guides, but specifically there's a long, lengthy, detailed guide from the California League of Cities on this exact issue.
Mhm.
And the different options that the jurisdictions have.
Right. Now just making clarification that it's the landowner that actually gets the vote, not the citizens when it comes to,
Pursuant to case
To that,
law,
yeah.
that would be, but this has been very litigated, so
Yeah.
I can't speak in black and white.
that's fine.
But I can brief it for you if that's something that you guys like.
And Marty, in 2 years, if we don't have any funds, where will the city be at? If we did the rate study or not?
Well, we're using enterprise funds. We don't use general fund.
No,
funds.
I'm saying in general though, would the city be able to still be an incorporated city where these rates wouldn't matter anymore? Or do
Oh,
we need to prioritize making sure that we have a city in 2 years over the rate study?
I'm not sure about the answer to that question.
Okay.
You disincorporate, I guess it becomes the county's responsibility, not the city's.
Right, but we want to stay a city, right? So
Right. I
just
hope
trying
so.
to show the priorities of where we're really trying to put a lot of our efforts at.
Right.
And obviously, this is a big item that needs to have a conversation. But let's make sure that we're going to be around for 10, 20, 30 years before we worry about trimming off a year of a rate study, and possibly increasing those sort of things. I think that this is something that can definitely take a backseat for 2 years until we're in a position where we have to do it again.
Well, that I think kind of dovetails with a question that I wanted to ask John. So, and this goes to what I was going to
Mhm.
speak to earlier, which is, so John, in your, 30 plus years of being a city engineer and overseeing. And overseeing, I'm assuming you've overseen, has managed Prop 218 sewage rate increase studies before in several jurisdictions. Have you seen other ways to do a volumetric rate increase for commercial and or a flat rate for multifamily that's really any different than what's in the NVS study? Are you familiar with some other calculation or methodology?
Not of any significance, meaning that there are certain protocols that almost every firm, whether it be NBS or other firms that I've seen, their job is to take the overall expenses that are either ongoing or anticipated and match that with charging fees. And how they split those fees up are based on anything from usage to concentration of wastewater coming out of commercial or industrial areas. So that there are some very standard industry practices. There's some decisions that have to be made by the governing board. Sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility as far as, one paying a little bit more, one paying a little bit less, or offsetting commercial with some residential or vice versa. I've seen all of those kinds of decisions being made. But the reality is that the methodology the considerations that are used in the current report by NBS is very, very typical what I've seen of a lot of other rate studies.
Okay, thank you, John. Anything further, Marty?
No, that was, I just
I have a
wanted to.
question for John, if
clarify
I
that.
may, or maybe it's for Rick. We were shown a study, I don't know if it was this one or not, wherein the study itself was identical past the cover sheet for different cities. Was that the sewer report that we actually saw suggested evidence that they were just copying and mailing?
A lot of the
It was-
boilerplate,
That is correct, yes.
a lot of the boilerplate of that particular study was reused from other cities. Now, I don't know whether the data was, but the
Understood.
boilerplate certainly was.
Yes, okay, well, 40 grand, that's easy peasy.
If I may, Mr. Hudson's comment about how soon this would come into play with the fiscal year makes sense that if we couldn't get it done in time for the 24-25 year, we're pushing it off to the 25-26 year. So it would probably make sense that we would wait because we couldn't get it done for this coming fiscal year from what I understand. So
It would be
now
good-
we're talking about 1 year difference. And so, I not, the folks out there that are paying it are not happy with it, but it does make sense that we would not do it at this time.
I'm not happy that I pay it either, but it is what it is. I got to look at it from a different
Well,
standpoint.
the
than,
biggest
you know, me
issue is
looking at
nobody
my house.
sees it as fair.
Right. No, and I get it. I saw it
And-
on my tax bill and I was like, oh my God.
And that's where it all boils down to. But if we couldn't get it done for the 24-25 year, it does not make sense that we would engage it at this time.
Last question,
Mr.
how do we
Bond.
challenge Prop 218 and get it thrown out at the state level?
Over to you.
Supreme Court.
A lot of energy that you don't have right now.
He'll do it.
Contact your state legislature.
I seriously believe that at this level, knowing what I've seen and heard and read, that it's faulty, flawed, and should be removed as a state proposition requirement for the cities and whatever else it's over.
I think the intent is to protect taxpayers. but-
that. At what price?
The,
Thank you.
Just with that, if you're not familiar with how Proposition 218 came to be law, it's an interesting research subject. So, and it has some local, not City of Willows, has some local implications. So, not the City of Willows. So that's all I'm going to say on that subject. That's why we have Proposition 218. Thank you, California Legislature. So, okay, it sounds like we have consensus of the city council not to pursue a new Proposition 218 sewage rate study at this time. Is that correct, gentlemen?
That would be correct.
Correct.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'd like to call for any public comment reference to this matter now. Anything? No? Okay. Okay. Anything further, Ms. Brown or Mr. Wang on this?
Not on that topic.
Good night,
no.
John.
No.
Drive safe. Get out of here while you can.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John, as always. Be safe. Moving on to item 8, comments and reports. Item 8A, council correspondence. I have no correspondence this evening. Item 8B, city council comments and reports. Who would like to begin? Evan?
Sure. So since I didn't get to do my report last month with being Christmas and everything else, I did get a chance to go to the library, my first library meeting, which was very eye-opening. I didn't realize that the library sees about 600 to 700 people walk through their door a month on a pretty regular basis, it was really eye-opening for me. I kind of figured it was a kind of a dead, quiet place in my ignorance. But had some good conversation there with the board and kind of look forward to keep working with them. And then this month will be my first time on the Transportation Committee, and we'll hopefully have something nice to report from there too, and excited to get working. So, yeah, just want to thank the staff of the city for their hard work and getting things taken care of and getting agenda packets out to us. I know sometimes it's not the easiest job to deal with 5 of us up here and take on everything else, but, yeah, that's all I got for you guys.
Okay, Evan, thank you. Mr. Vaughn?
I'm fine, but I do want to support what you said about the city staff and all the folks and everybody working hard. Thanks for getting us more people, Marty. I have an optimistic outlook towards the city of Willows going forward. It's going to be great. We're making it.
I agree.
Thank you, David. Mr. Thomas?
Yes, on Monday, I attended the LAFCO meeting. They just we approved the annexation of 89 parcels into the Orland Artois Water District, so they can get surface water instead of pumping it. There was an interesting conversation about subsidence in that area from the groundwater pumping. So I found that interesting. Also, at the last meeting, we appointed myself as the continuing member of LAFCO with Mr. Bodden, the alternate. The city of Willows does not have an alternate this year, so you are excused from that. It is, the
Thank you,
alternate is
Mr.
coming
Thomas.
from the city of Orland, and it's Mayor Dobbs. So that would be it for me.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick. We actually do have an alternate. So David, you're still the alternate. So the alternate was asked for just in case.
Thank you, Mayor Hanson.
Sorry, Rick.
Well,
Sorry, Dave.
he doesn't get a packet and he doesn't get here from the, because the alternate comes from the city of Orland.
Is it, Councilmember Thomas,
Resolve this. Either is or isn't.
is the Orland alternate actually on our committee list? Is that written?
I don't know, but every year,
It
each
switches.
year,
right?
it's one year is Willows is the
Okay.
alternate, next year it's the Orland alternate.
Got
And so Mr. Bodden is no longer the alternate as announced at the LAFCO meeting, and it's Chris Dobbs from Orland
Got it.
is the
Okay.
alternate.
Yeah, how that works is we can request an alternate. If so desired. We've had some problems in years past with unattendance at some of the meetings, so there's Willows had requested an alternate, but we can always have a discussion on that. if need be. In this
If
case,
I
you-
flake out,
You would just be the alternate for Rick, so Rick could make it, yeah.
Whatever you guys say. I'm
Yeah.
happy.
okay.
So,
Well, that's what I learned when I was sitting
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the meeting.
There was an interesting twist at our. So I'll go with my report now, an interesting twist. I'll cover that one first. At the city selection meeting that was conducted, annual meeting with our major city county appointments to the different boards and commissions. Was held Wednesday, January 3rd, and with myself and Chris Dobbs, the city of Orland. And a new one for me this year was in reference to the Glenn County Waste Management Regional Agency Governing Board. The city of Willows this year, per Glenn County, lists 2 members and 1 alternate member. On our city committee appointment list, it was listed 1 member and 1 alternate member, just like the city of Orland is. I was told that the Waste Management Regional Agency Governing Board alternates every other year, just like the Transportation Commission and the Glenn County Regional Transit Committee meetings. But I had never seen that before. We've always had 1 member and 1 alternate. So I questioned that. But I was told at that meeting for Glenn County personnel that the city of Willows this year has 2 members and 1 alternate on the Waste Management Regional Agency Governing. So previously it was Mr. Sprague was going to be our member, and Mr. Hudson was the alternate. So the way the meeting doled out, Evan, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you before this meeting, it's Mr. Sprague and Mr. Hudson as the members, and I'm the alternate. So if that's a problem, Evan, I'll work it out with you. We have it's a quarterly meeting, and it's they generally follow the Regional Transit Committee and Transportation Commission.
Okay.
So, yeah, I didn't want to throw you the wolves there, but this was news to me. And I've never seen this before. It's always been one member, one alternate. This year, for some reason, we have two members and one.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Just wanted to put that out there. And Marty, I'll get you that information. No,
Yeah, we should
this week.
get that to the
Tomorrow.
city clerk.
Yes, I'll get you that tomorrow.
If there was ever a month that went by that I didn't have to update the committee list, I don't know what I would do with myself.
How many times have you updated the committee list so far?
Every month since I've started working at the city, yeah.
And it's still not right.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the city selection committee. It was interesting.
I actually do have a question. I'm looking at this, and I know last time I went to a library meeting, I had filled in for the Regional Transit Committee for Councilmember Sprague. Now it's on the second Thursday. Was that something that they changed with you, or is that?
It's
'cause
something they
last time it
changed
was
with
on the
me.
third, is every other third Thursday on the old one, so that's why I was double checking.
Yeah, no, they have not reached out to me on that.
Okay,
Anything further?
nope, that was it.
Okay.
Just asking questions.
Yeah, very good.
I'm
Very
really
good.
good at that, apparently.
Yeah, there you go. You're doing your job. Yeah, and briefly, on December, 2 days following our last council meeting, December 14th, 2023, we had our Regional Transit Committee and Transportation Commission special meetings. The only reason it was a special meeting was because it was on a different week than normally because of the holidays. And rather full agendas, mostly routine business. But in reference to the Regional Transit Committee, I'm pleased to report that the Glenn Transit Service Operations and Management Contract was awarded to Paratransit Services Incorporated, who has been operating Glen Ride for a number of years, and they've been doing and just an outstanding job at all levels, all facets, from administration management to boots on the ground with local management and the drivers, moving our citizens around safely each and every day, most of the hours of the day. And Paratransit was the only bidder. There were other interested firms, but Paratransit was the only bidder. But the contract was awarded, and that is good. That is good news for Glen Ride. Reference to the Transportation Commission, the 2024 State Transportation Improvement Program was approved, and the list in reference to the City of Willows of interest is, since we've completed the Sacramento Street and the Lassen Street and the Pacific Avenue projects, the next project on that particular list with the Glenn County Transportation Program is the Laurel Street mill and fill from Tehama Street to Lassen Street, and that's slated for fiscal year 26, 27. Okay, that's the next major project on that list. In Glenn County, we work together, our partner agencies, City of Willows, City of Orland, County of Glenn, and move back and forth to the different projects amongst the three levels of the three government entities, county and both cities. So since, like I said, we just completed Pacific Avenue, it's now somebody else's turn. And then our next major project, again, will be the Lassen Street project coming up. And with that pretty much wrapped up that. I'd like to report out finally on the Glenn Groundwater Authority. Mentioned, we just talked at length about the Proposition 218 process. We're undergoing a current Proposition 218 process with the Groundwater Authority this year. Plus, we've deemed, as I've reported out before, an incomplete status on our groundwater sustainability plan from the state of California. We're working with that each and every day. We're working on that. It means a lot of meetings. There's a lot going on. We are getting there, and we have to have the updated report into the state by toward the end of April. And we're very much on track for doing that. Like I said, it's involved a lot of work, a lot of extra work, but there were basically 3 points. And Rick, you mentioned subsidence. That is an issue in the sub-basin. And our groundwater authority, our sister agency is the Colusa Groundwater Authority. So we're all within Glenn and the Glenn and Colusa County portions under the Colusa sub-basin. We're in this together. The groundwater sustainability plan for the Glenn County portion is the same plan as for the Colusa County portion. And there's been subsidence in the Orland Artois area and in the Arbuckle area. And that is a major concern to the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Board, which is one of the main reasons we were deemed it incomplete. So we're working, we have met with the Department of Water Resources. I was present at that meeting on December 19th. It was a very productive meeting. We have another meeting scheduled on January 22nd with our Glenn Groundwater Authority, Colusa Groundwater Authority partners, and our consultant team, who David's Engineering, and they are doing an excellent work on this. They've done a lot of work for us in the past. They're very good at what they do, and we're moving forward as on those issues. That was the bulk of the discussion reference to the Groundwater Authority. The good news we received was the Orland Artois annexation project. That was really good news. And Emil, the Orland Artois manager, and the Orland Artois Water District Board has been working feverishly on that for years. So it's a major milestone. So that was really good news. And lastly, there you go again, Chief. Be safe. Lastly, I'd like to comment. I received a email message from an individual in reference to public comment and public questions during city council meetings. So our city council meetings, we obviously we follow proper decorum. We follow Rosenberg's rules of order here. They are public meetings, as we all know. They are the public's meetings. It's we're conducting the public's business. So under public comment, matters of the public may make any comments that they wish, as long as it's done calmly. All right, and we maintain a proper decorum here. That's why we call for public comments. And Caroline, I'd like to thank you for pointing out that I kind of went a little fast over the initial public comments asking. Sorry about that. But so when we call for public comments, initially it's public comments. We ask for public comments not on the agenda. And after that, we always call for public comments on every agenda item. I'd like to just let the public know that public comments are welcomed and encouraged. This is a public meeting. We'll do our best to facilitate an effective, efficient meeting. I assure you, I'll do the same. That's the way City of Willows operates. That's the way the Willow City Council operates. That's the way I've always operated. However, if a member of the public has technical questions or questions in reference to any agenda item, I'd like to encourage the public, members of the public, to contact a council member or council members or our city staff or city manager, particularly our city manager, and refer those questions via email. Would be an ideal way to do it, so that staff can research the matter and get appropriate answers. Sometimes when a question comes up, I know our city council members, it's our job and our duty, and our oath of office to thoroughly research and read and educate ourselves on the matters that are presented before us. Our staff spends a lot of time and energy researching and getting answers for every agenda item, as we know, and it's our job to read and inquire. In my case, I generally quite often, if not most of the time, not all the time, have questions in reference to agenda items that I will ask our city manager for information on. I always get the information that I requested. Sometimes if questions come up from the public, oftentimes the public will have questions that city staff just doesn't have the answer right off the top of their head, because there's a lot of business that goes on within within City Hall here. There are a lot of matters there, it's been mentioned tonight with the capital improvement plan discussion, all these projects that have been completed over the past year and all the projects that we're looking forward to. There's a lot going on here. And it's not easy just to, well, it's impossible and extremely difficult just to have the correct answer off the top of one's head. So please, if members of the public have questions, please feel free to contact any of us members of the City Council. Contact me if you'd like at any time. My email is readily available on the city website here. If you have questions, I will not only email you, I'll talk to you, I'll call you, I'll meet with you. If you have questions for staff, please feel free to send those questions to our city manager for research. That way you get, that way you'll receive an effective, an efficient, actual, exact answer, or at least the effort will be made to provide an answer. I just wanted to throw that information out to members of the public who may be tuned in this evening. Please submit your questions in advance or after the meeting if a question comes up that can't be answered during a meeting. But it's oftentimes a question is asked that we just flat don't have the answer to. It's our job to I will always call for public comment, and we will have our discussion and our debate as a city council, and ultimately come to whatever conclusion we decide to, using the democratic process of our republic to come to. And I just wanted to throw that out there for any members of the public who may have those questions. But again, to reiterate, we encourage public comment on any and all matters, as long as decorum is proper, and the relationship is civil. And I see no reason why it wouldn't be here within city council chambers.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Vaughn.
we received, I believe all of us did, a when decorum and civility do not work, then what? I believe this was a result of your trip down to San Diego. But anyway, this was a good piece. Thank you so much. And it deals with, what to do when things don't go right. So I thought this
Yes.
was educational, informative, and if you haven't looked at it, we do have options.
I did look at it. Yes, we definitely do have options. As of last year, there was an option, a brand new,
And it gave
Codified option.
cases, examples, which were kind of fun because
Yeah.
I think most of them came from Willow.
no. No,
Made you
yeah.
laugh.
Other jurisdictions have, yeah.
That's
have-
when we had
have
a lot of
issues as
people
well.
sitting over here. They were actually just studying us and watching us.
There you go.
Oh, they're doing it now on TV.
Yeah,
But
yeah, they don't have to come in anymore.
anyway, we strive to conduct our business, our business in an open, honest, efficient manner here. And I believe we do, and we have, we will continue that. So any of my colleagues have any further comments on that?
I think
matter?
we have a closed session coming up.
We do. Very good.
Okay.
That's all I had. So I can take a hint, David.
Well,
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Moving on to, let's go to item C, City Manager's Report. Marty.
Very quickly, I
Almost
just
forgot
wanted
about
to, that's all right. I just wanted to remind the council and the public that we do have a special city council meeting on Wednesday, January 17th at 5:30 PM, covering two topics. One will be an update to the mid-year budget. We'll be seeking approval from the council on that, as well as an update to the financial forecasting model that based on the recently approved law enforcement contract. And that forecasting model has been tightened up with a few other things that were missing from other renditions that you saw in the fall while we were trying to figure out the law enforcement contract. So that'll be the first item. Andy wanted to get that done as quickly as possible. Usually that would be done in March. So this is really early because we recognize there's some big choices ahead of us pretty soon, and wanted to have the council be able to make the most informed decision if and when there's going to be a sales tax measure on the November ballot. And that will be the second item, which will be a discussion about what does that look like and what percentage does that look like, to get that conversation going. And the idea being that there'll be a chance to discuss it next week, right after Andy's presentation, hopefully again on the 23rd, and then seek any direction from the council on any further movement on that item for a November ballot measure, if the council so inclined. So that is all next week. Starting next week, this will be our first conversation about sales November ballot measure since our last conversations about an earlier ballot measure that didn't happen. So we're getting the ball rolling early in the year for conversation, discussion.
Thank you, Marty. Wednesday, January 17th,
5:30 p.m.
5:30 PM. Very good. Okay, thank you. Looking forward to that meeting. Anything further, Marty?
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 9, our closed session pursuant to Government Code Sections 549, 54.3. The public will have an opportunity to directly address the legislative body on the items below prior to the council convening in a closed session, and public comments are generally restricted to 3 minutes. Those items are item 9A, public employee performance evaluation. This will be with the city attorney, and item 9B, public employee performance evaluation. This will be with the city manager. Are there any public comments on these items before we move into closed session? Hearing none. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending the regular meeting. We will, the time is now 7:37 PM, and we'll be entering into closed session at this time. Thank you. Night, Cliff.